Hello friends! So it's been a little bit since I've actually made a YouTube video. I took a little over a year off when I got pregnant, and it took me a little bit longer to adjust to being a first-time mom than I actually thought it was going to. But I'm back now, and I came across the perfect first project back to YouTube. An acrylic wall calendar. So I have a 20-inch by 32-inch piece of acrylic here. I got mine at Menards. I also got the nickel standoff screws at Menards. And I'm going to be putting the matte black adhesive permanent vinyl onto it to customize it to my calendar needs. So let's get designing. I always like to start with a template before I get too far into designing to make sure everything can fit. So I started by making two rectangles. The first one was 32 inches wide by 20 inches tall to represent my acrylic sheet. The second one is 30 inches wide by 18 inches tall. I selected both, went to align and centered them to attach them. This just shows what workable space I do have. I did not want to make a calendar by scratch, so I went into the Design Space image library to find a calendar in there. Now I didn't like that top part, so I did slice that off and delete all of it. And my calendar was so big, I ended up having to make a rectangle the size of my big cutting mat, which was 11.5 by 23, and I cut that down into two pieces. I then selected both pieces and grouped it together to make it easier to move, and then I started adding the days of the week. I am using the font BFC Banana Shake. Once I got them all typed out though, I selected all of them, went to align, and I centered them vertically to then distribute them horizontally. That just made sure that they were evenly spaced within that area that I had typed out. I grouped them all together, and then I selected the calendar group to group that all together too, so it was moving and I didn't have to realign anything. Decided I wanted a section on the side for a list, so I made a square that was as tall as the calendar lines, just so it all kind of goes well together. I duplicated that several times, and then I selected all of them, went up to a line, and I centered them horizontally and back up to a line to distribute them vertically, and then I just grouped them all together. I used the same BFC Banana Shake font, and I wanted to actually split it into two different lists, one for groceries and one for special dates. I did center my text with my lines just to make sure everything looked good and clean. I wanted my family name up at the top, and for that I used the font BFC Farmhouse Christmas, and then I just welded it all together once it was there. I did end up welding my list together too, just so that they would all cut together, and then I went to cut it. I did use the premium vinyl cut setting on more pressure. That's just what works really good for my Cricut, so adjust accordingly. I decided to use a matte black permanent adhesive vinyl for this project. I like the way that the matte vinyl looks better than the gloss, so that's what we went with. I got this vinyl off of Amazon. It came in a bulk roll. I will have it listed down below in the description. It is super inexpensive, and it's easy to cut, easy to weed, and honestly, it's probably one of my favorite vinyls. I'm not very handy with power tools, so I asked my husband if he would put the holes in the acrylic sheet for me, so he did. He used my T-square to make a cross, so he knew exactly where the center of the hole was going to be. He used a drill bit the size of the standoff screw and just went nice and slow so he didn't break it. So my husband got the holes drilled in my new acrylic sheet. This acrylic sheet is actually 28 by 30, so the dimensions have changed, and it's also thicker. You can see this one right here is the first one. This one is the one we're going to use. We had to get a new one because he went a little fast trying to drill the hole and broke the corner off this first one.
Oh, damn it.
So this first one was a 20 by 32. This one is a 28 by 30. My decals should fit fine, but I might have to remake them. We'll see. Honestly, I like the way this sits kind of central between the two holes off to the side. The calendar looks good size. If I make the Lovelit family just a little bit bigger, that still gives me plenty of room to write the month up there. And honestly, I could even center this a little bit.
So I'm gonna go ahead and measure this, see kind of how big I do want it to be. I think we are gonna go with the 21 inch by 4 3/4 inch last name.
Before I started cutting my vinyl, I cut a piece of paper the size that my vinyl decal was gonna be, just to make sure that the size fit nice.
That looks much better. I think we're going to place the calendar on the board first. I think that's gonna be the hardest part. So let's put some transfer tape on. So my idea here is, because I had to split my calendar in half to cut it with my Cricut, if I put enough vinyl on to catch the bottom half of this calendar, it will help me line it up. So fingers crossed it actually works.
So my strategy was just basically to get the bottom of the calendar on there and get the top lined up square so I could just lay it all together. Other than that, I didn't know what I was doing.
Okay, that was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was a little rough, but not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I used my T-square to make some guidelines so I knew exactly where the vinyl was supposed to be, but also to make sure I laid it straight.
So I think I'm actually going to start applying on this corner here first. I went through all that trouble lining up to just leave that extra piece of paper there, so I didn't pick up the way I wanted.
After making this mistake, I was in my head a lot and I was super worried about getting everything lined up straight that I ended up trying to fix the issue and created a new one.
Nope. Alright, I gotta recut the bottom. Before I cut the bottom, I'm gonna try to lay that part. I'm gonna try not to be so timid about it. Let's do it.
After I messed up the bottom, it was really hard to put the top part down with any confidence because I did not want to have to cut the top part again like I have to do the bottom. So I just tried to stay as calm and as smooth as I possibly could. I've laid vinyl down so many times before, I knew I could do it.
You got a T and an S that came with me, but that's okay.
And cue another confidence killer.
Starting to feel like I shouldn't be doing this project to begin with.
That was close.
So now let's see if this will stay. Or if I'm gonna fight it too. No?
And of course, just as I was starting to think that it was smooth sailing and it wasn't gonna fight me.
And just like that. Get some more vinyl cut.
Okay, I have sliced the top part and the bottom part into 3 different sections, hoping this will help me lay it just a little bit better.
I was able to salvage the days of the week. I could probably salvage some of these lines, but there's so many creases in there. It would bug me knowing that they're there. Okay, we're going to try this again. Fingers crossed. I'm going to start with this middle piece because I want to make sure the T and the E line up, so then I can just line these lines up with that line.
I was so worried that if I did smaller sections, I wouldn't get it to line up as good, so that's why I tried the bigger ones, but this is the way to do it.
One section down.
After all the vinyl that I have cut and had to throw away, it is a relief to see everything finally starting to come together.
That's what I'm thinking right there.
After applying the calendar, I took my T-square and dry erase marker to make a couple points of reference for my grocery and special days list. So I made a line where the top and the bottom line went for both lists, so I had more than one line of reference. I did the same thing for the top where I put the Lovelet family. I made a line for the bottom and then a line for the top and just applied Lovelet family in between those lines. Like I said earlier, I am no good with power tools, so I recruited my husband to take our old calendar down and help me put up our new one. So he did end up pre-drilling a couple holes in the wall first to make it easier when putting up those backside parts of the standoff screws. Now the kit that we got came with everything we needed. So once we got the backs on, we just held up the acrylic sheet and then just started twisting in those front pieces. Basically, it's like you got a screw that goes into the wall to hold the back, and then you screw in the front part. It's kind of like an earring, but with screws that go into walls, if that makes any sense. Now, I made this calendar back in March, so this is me dating it for the very first time. I used Expo markers, but that was before I knew that chalk markers actually work better on these kind of acrylic calendars. But honestly, it worked out perfect. I had room for everything that I wanted to write down, and just look at it.